In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a photo that I've created in Photoshop and a logo that I've created in Illustrator to bring them both back into InDesign to create an event flyer. So the first thing that I'm going to do because we're going to start this from scratch, is to go to File and New Document. And I have my preview window selected in my new document panel so I can see what's going on. The first thing that I'm going to do is select and uncheck facing pages. I would like the page size to be a letter half, so I have that selected. I want the orientation to be landscape, so I've switched this. I just needed to jog it by clicking both of them. So this is now a landscape orientation. And I'm going to change the margins to 1 pica 6 points, which is 1/4 inch. So now I've got 1/4 inch margin, which means that I can print this on a standard office printer and it will print fine. So I'm going to say OK, and that's going to bring me back into my document window. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I'm not filling the screen quite so much. So the first thing that I need to do is get my image from Photoshop, and to get objects into InDesign from someplace else, you file and place them. So I'm going to file and place, and now I have navigated out to a folder where I have all of my assets, and the asset that I'm looking for is, and I'm just going to change this over to icon view so I can make sure that I have what I want. And what I'm looking for is the Football Friday photo. So I'm going to double click on that, and then I'm going to use my margins as guides and pull this down to where it fills the margins. And then I have a little bit of leftover at the bottom, so I'm just going to use the frame edges to clip the photo up just a little bit. So now I have an image that's going to sit in the background of my picture, and I need some places to put some text. So in the finished version, I have 3 boxes, and that's what I'm going to do on this. I'm going to pull out 3 boxes. So I'm going to come over to my color chips that are down in the lower left hand corner of my tool panel. I see that my fill is currently set for this blue. Let me go over to my swatches panel and just tear off my swatches panel so I can see it, and I'm going to change the fill to white. So now if I go and take my rectangle tool, I see that I'm going to fill my rectangle with a white fill, and it will have no stroke. So I'm going to fiddle around with the sizes later. Right now I'm just going to quickly pull out some boxes and just give myself a place to say something, because the text in InDesign needs to live in a home, and this is the home that each one of my pieces of text is going to end up in. Now, I don't want to sit here and type out everything that I've typed out before, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to place a text file. And the text file will have not only the text that I want to use, but some guides for which fonts and sizes that I want to end up with. So I'm going to File and Place, and I have an InDesign script, and I'm going to double click on that. And I'm going to come over to this gray area, which is my pasteboard, and click and drag this out, and that's going to give me a text box, and I can see that the top part of the text box has my little cheat sheet on what I want to use for fonts and the sizes, and it also has the text that I want to use. So the first thing that I'm going to do is start putting the text from this script into the text boxes, and then I'll go back and format them. So Football Fridays is my is my title. So I'm going to select that and copy it with a Controller Command C. Because I've got the type tool already selected, if I hover over the box, I see that my cursor goes from a square cursor to a round cursor. That says there is a home for this text that I've copied to live, and if I click and paste or click down, I get a blinking cursor and I can Controller Command V and get that text in the box. So I'm not going to worry about the fact that it's sitting up in the upper corner at this moment, because I'm going to come back and format a lot of these boxes all at the same time. So I'm going to repeat this copy and pasting into my appropriate fields, and then we're going to talk about how these text boxes are going to look. So right now I'm going to worry about my Football Fridays, but the first thing that I'm going to do is, I know just by looking at what I have for my finished document that the text in my my title and my "Why do you want to do this" box at the lower left, those are centered type. So I'm going to select my type, come up to my formatting tools, and say that I would like to center align this type. I'm going to center align this type also. Then what I want to do is float the type in the center of the box, or align it center. As I click on each of these boxes, you see that they're all aligned at the top. So I would like my title box and my "Why do you want to do this" box, which I've selected, and then I'm shift clicking to select the other one. I want these two boxes to have their type aligned in the center. So now my type is aligned in the center, which leaves me to format this more. So I'm going to go ahead with my Football Fridays, and I see that the title, I wanted that to be Brim Narrow 20. So I'm coming up to the font picker and dropping that down, and because Brim Narrow is something that I had chosen before, it's in the top part of my font list. If it was not, I would just use the scroll bar to go down and find it, or search for it by starting to type out the name. But I'm going to click Brim Narrow, and I'm going to increase the font size to 20. I don't have 20 in my drop down picker, so I can either type that in or just click until I get 20 in the box. So I've got Football Fridays at Brim Narrow 20. My body, I'm going to select the body text, and I want it to be Trade Gothic Light Standard 16. So I see that I've already got this in my font picker as Trade Gothic Light Standard, but I'm just going to click this up to where it's 16. And my dreaming text, or thinking, mine is thinking. I'm going to say let's dreaming about playing football. It's really easy to change the words, even though I've got something in my imported text field. I can just go over it with my type tool and click and change. What if I'd made a typo? I could easily change that. So I'm going to select this line, and I'm going to say that it's Trade Gothic Standard bold 2, bold number 2. That's good, and it's 12 points. And now what I'd like to do is change the color. I have my color as green, which is the Centennial green, or Bowman Field green. Okay, so let's come up to my swatches panel and look for Bowman Field. And so I've got Bowman Field, and then the Checkout Football Fridays, I want that to be Trade Gothic regular, but I would like it to be 18 points. I really want to get people's attention. Then I'm going to come up and select the top line that says dreaming about playing football for Clemson, and I'm going to come up to my formatting tools and say that I'd like a little space after that, and I'm going to click up on this box, and that's just spreading that out a bit. So now I've got my Football Fridays finished. I've got the dreaming about playing football for Clemson. I see that in my bullet list, I've got the text inset a bit, which is to be moved in from the edges. And I also see that I have the what, who, where, and when in green, and it's bold. So now what I need to do is go back to my current event flyer and change that. So I'm going to select the word what, and I'm going to go up to my styles and change that to bold. And then I'm going to come back over to swatches and make my color, the Boom and Field, green. And now that I have this what green, I can use this as a model for the who, where, and when. What I'm going to do is use the eyedropper tool, which is I in your keyboard. And I'm going to select the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to take the formatting out of the what and just apply it over the who, where, and when. It's a nice little trick when you don't have time to make styles. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, I'm going back and getting my selection tool, is I need to make the inset of this. I need to get that text off of the edge of this box. So knowing that this is a text object, I'm going to the object drop down menu, and I'm going to the text frame options, and I'm going to click on the inset spacing until it's 1 pica 0 points. That looks pretty good. And then I don't have any room between my paragraphs, so I want to change that by including a space after in the paragraph formatting option. So I'd like some space after each paragraph. So I'm just going to click on this until I get something that I like, and usually 0 pica 6 is a good space to have between paragraphs, so that looks pretty good. Going back and taking my black selection tool. So now I've got something that looks pretty similar to my finished flyer, but my finished flyer has rounded edges, a stroke, and some transparency in the panel, and I also have a logo. So let's go back over to my flyer in progress, and I'm going to click these and shift click to select each one of these boxes so I can do this all together. And what I'm looking for is to round the corners, and there's a very convenient object panel called the Object Convert Shape, in which I could convert any shape to any of these shapes. The one I want is rounded rectangle, and that looks good. And I want a stroke on this, so I'm going to just increase a stroke, and that's going to just put that on there. It says it's white. I don't really want white. I want to pick a different color. So I'm going to come to my swatches panel, and I think that the color that I want is this nice Centennial Oak, which is nice. If you don't have the Clemson swatches downloaded to your InDesign, you can find them at the brand page for Clemson. So if you just search for Clemson brand palette, there are palettes that you can download, and then in the swatches drop down menu you can load swatches. So you could load that file up, and then you can have all of the Clemson swatches yourself. So now that I've got these panels, I know that I would like some transparency for that panel because I think it will look better, and that is an effect. So it's an object effect, so I'm going back to object, and I'm looking for effects, and I'm looking for transparency. So the transparency that I want is not the transparency for the object. I only want the fill to be transparent. So I am now targeting in these three panels the fill to be transparent, and I'm going to take the opacity down to about 75%. I think that looked pretty good. So now I've got the transparency for that, and now I think I'm going to go back to the object and I'm going to add a drop shadow to the whole object. So let's see how that looks. If I don't like it, I can always take it off. So no, that looks pretty good. So it's a little big, so I'm going to go to the drop shadow controls and just dial that in a little bit. I'm going to make that 0 pica 4. That's usually about what I'm looking for, 0 pica 3, 0 pica 4, something like that. Sometimes I'll change the opacity, but this looks pretty good. And I'm going to click OK. And now I have my panels, and you can see a little bit of the background in it, which looks nice. And so the last thing that I've got to add in is the logo. So I'm going to add the logo in, and I see that in the other flyer this was a little shorter and this was a little taller, so I'm just gonna scoot that up. This is going to give me more room for my and I'm going to push this down just a little bit, snug it up. Okay, so now I've got more room for my logo, and I'm going to like that better. So let's do that, and then I have one more thing, which is to talk about why this picture looks blurry, and that is a viewing option. But first I'm going to file and place the logo that I built in Illustrator, and it is the Friday Football PNG logo. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to get a little black box, and the reason it's black is because it's a PNG file, and that's just the way they show up here. But as soon as I place it, it will look fine. So I'm going to draw my logo out to the size that I want it to be, which is about like that. And then I'm going to just make sure that that's centered using that smart guide. And so now I have this Friday football, and if I unclick everything, deselect everything, then I can click W on my keyboard, and I see that what my flyer is going to look like when I print it out, except for that blurry picture. So probably what's going on there is under the view menu. So if I go up to view, drop down display performance, I see that I'm getting a typical display because InDesign doesn't want to waste the resources of itself to display something high quality. Because it knows that you did the right thing to put a good picture in there. But if you want to see what it's going to look like high quality, which you probably do, just to comfort yourself, now you can see that my picture is nice and crisp and it all looks good, and I am ready to export this. So what I'm going to do is save the file first. So File, Save, and I had the finished one. So now I'm going to call this Final Friday Demonstration, and save that file. And so now I have an InDesign file, but I don't have something that I could use someplace else. So what I'm going to do is a file and export this as a PDF for print, and I'm going to save it, and that's going to give me a PDF version of it. What I really probably need to do is set this up with on back to back, so I can print 2 half pages on 1 full page and then just cut them in half. But for right now, I'm just going to export this as a PDF, and that because that's the way most people are going to want the output is in PDF format. So I'm going to click Save, and it's going to, I've got a high quality print, that's good, all pages, blah, 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 and I am going to click the link for that, and now I have my original file, and I have this PDF version that I can share with somebody else. So that is how you take a image that you have manipulated in Photoshop and a logo that you've drawn in Illustrator and you can bring both of those things back into InDesign and create a nice looking event flyer.